It's once again time to stop messing around and go back to playing a game from the bad old days, and in this short video I wanted to take a look at an old favourite of mine, Timesplitters 2. It's a first-person shooter of a vein that doesn't really exist anymore, so it's hard to quickly describe it. Overall, I think it's really good. However, my goal today was to find things to complain about, and I managed to come up with a few things. So let's go through them and look at various random things to showcase the game along the way. Here I'm playing in story mode, which is a series of unrelated vignette level concepts in which you must do something. And that something is where I was able to find a decent approach for a complaint. For example, in this first level, we're infiltrating a Soviet base. The question is why, and what is the goal of the game, but that genuinely doesn't matter very much. More specifically, what am I supposed to do to advance the level? In this case, the answer is go and pick up a disc in this dark room, fight a load of zombies, because there are zombies in this vignette, because they're all just random gameplay concepts basically, and then you go back to an earlier point in the level and press X on a certain screen in a certain room. What the game won't tell you is any of that. So I knew how to do it because I'd done it before, and I guess I was surprised to see there wasn't anything where it was like press X to interact, to like signify that there was a screen that was part of the gameplay at all as you walk past it, or as a clue to go and do something with it later. This is like an old favourite talking point of mine. I ranted about this when discussing Mech Engineer as well, which is the concept of hand-holding. Timesplitters 2 doesn't hold your hand, in that it doesn't tell you what to do. It never tells you to use the disc you pick up to do anything, or indicates there was a use for it. And the question is that good? You've got your two vague camps. You've got the yes, it's good camp, in which one avoids feeling patronised or unimmersed by being guided towards doing basic things, like as if you were too stupid to ever figure them out yourself, a la the Adventure Line complaint. And then you've got this it's bad camp, which takes a different direction, at least for me anyway, which is where you say the game isn't quote-unquote supposed to be about working out what objects are interactable, like a la point-and-click games. So if you are stopping the player from going to the next part where you shoot zombies because the door's locked by an unmarked computer in a room full of computers that just shot by earlier, then you might as well just tell them how to open the door, because like them working it out wasn't quote-unquote supposed to be fun for them. But then you can take that further and just say, well, okay, if we're going to cut out that challenge, we might as well not have the door be locked, and we quickly proceed to a different kind of game where it's focused on something more purely, a la Ultra Kill. Well, we say we don't need a point-and-click part in the mission, just cut it out entirely. There's no disc, no computer. The door opens when you kill the enemies, and then more enemies come out. Like, this is a more pure shooter design. My personal take is that I don't really know what I'm talking about. I've had it and seen it both ways, I guess. I'm personally someone who does get a bit bothered by the game telling you what to do, or making you notice things that are useful by default. Obviously, when it's used as an accessibility option or just an easy mode or what have you, that's all fine. But I guess I'm like, well, you know, if you painted all the ledges you have to climb on yellow so the player knows what exact route they're intended to take with the climbing mechanic, why have a climbing mechanic as the gameplay at all? Like, that's where I'm cynical about it. But then again, check out this footage of me running around the first level of Timesplitters 2 because I had no idea what you were supposed to do. I forgot my childhood memories. I got lost, and I had this vague idea that you needed to use a lift at this stage, but I didn't know which one, and I used the wrong one, and it caused me to spend 5 minutes doing nothing. An Adventure Line would have made the game better for me here. Which leads us to the real answer to this question, I think. There is no winning. Basically, it goes like this. If I ever experience one frame of inferior gameplay, which the game design could have avoided, then it didn't handhold enough. But if I ever experience one frame in which I felt some choice or interesting decision was taken away from me because I just had to do what the game intended, and it could have just done it for me if it really wanted to force my hand, then it's too handholdy, and you know, there's probably no particular way to solve this. It's just a problem. That said, I like how something like Breath of the Wild / Tears of the Kingdom approaches this, in that it doesn't give you any particular information on what to do, so that it's all your adventure, but it also has like items sparkling, points of interest glowing, it continuously shows you the controls on the screen, all that jazz. It doesn't let the player miss any opportunities they might enjoy, but nor does it particularly tell you to do anything or require you to do anything more specifically. So, I don't know. Maybe that's the rule, like point out opportunities, but let people be free, and so to vaguely attempt to apply this stupid rule I've just made up to the current example, they should have told me about using the lift to go to the top of this dam. And if you want finding it to be gameplay, then don't have a line on the ground leading to it. Let the players look up its location from a list of various lifts on the wall or something, or let people take the stairs. Let there be some choice. I don't know. This isn't a very important point to rant about here, really, but I am here to rant, and that was the food for thought that I'm regurgitating into your mouth right now, about this little experience. Let's move on to what is my favourite level in the game, the very second entry, Chicago. You might ask why the first level of this shooter was about infiltrating a Soviet military base, and the second one is about being a straight-shooting renegade fighting the 1920s mob. And the answer is no reason. The game is just full of stuff, and that's why it's good. Do you want to shoot some random goons in an N64 GoldenEye style first-person shooter? Well, you can, and it's in the same game, where you shoot zombies in crypts and cowboys in the Wild West, and monkeys and vampires and robots and windows, we'll see that later, aliens, snowmen, just stuff. It's an ideas game of a type that doesn't really get professionally made in the modern era, which makes it more refreshing to visit now, I think. Now, the other complaint I wanted to bring out will be seen here. Probably my last complaint for this video, and that's a rare claim for me to make. The aiming is weird. Timesplitters has very loose controls, with an unusual approach to auto-aiming, that makes it very hard to be precise with shooting, even when shooting things right in front of you. And while you're not supposed to be precise with the shooting, so like it's designed around this, it's still annoying enough that I'm going to talk about it. One bit of strangeness is that your character has this natural sway cycle, and this affects the auto-aiming. The enemy needs to be in a slightly different place on the screen at any given part of this cycle in order to get the game to fire at them. But more importantly, your auto-aim zone, your invisible zone, moves side to side when you do, especially if you're turning. This makes the classic FPS circle strafing run and gun kind of gameplay not work, because you're not really allowed to fire at the middle of the screen while you're turning. And if you've played any frenetic, classic or modern shooter, you probably know that you want to be turning constantly, or moving around constantly at the very least. And I think that would have been the case even when this game came out. So Timesplitters takes some getting used to with its controls, probably because it's inheriting so much from GoldenEye, as I mentioned before. Like, this game is a lot like N64's GoldenEye, which was designed with a different control scheme in mind, in particular one joystick. So it's inheriting that in a two-joystick system probably is why it's a bit weird compared to other console FPSs. It does mean that the best way to be accurate is to stand still, effectively, which I guess makes sense, because that's true in real life and stuff, but it's weird how it's mechanically enforced. It doesn't quite feel right, because other games do it differently, and it feels more fun in those other games, so that's the problem here. You can also press an aim button to switch from auto-aiming to manually aiming with a crosshair. I often tried to do this during combat, but with very mixed results. It's basically the same thing they had back in GoldenEye, but it's very sensitive in Timesplitters. So it takes real joystick discipline to hold the crosshair still. It's always trying to spring back to the middle of the screen, like that's the neutral position. So you have to hold the stick in a precise place to get the shot to line up with a particular spot on the screen. I remember it is possible to use this to reliably get headshots, and it's really useful on hard difficulty. But whatever the specific muscle memory required for this was, I didn't really have it anymore and couldn't do it. One thing that does work in your favour, though, is that the AI almost always stands still to attack you, and they can't use cover. So it's about as easy as the targeting can get in a shooter, despite all of my complaints. It just feels off because you aren't in total control of where to shoot, and you can't chain movement and shooting together very easily, as you might expect to be able to do in an arcade-style 2000s shooter like Unreal Tournament or something. Another thing working in my favour, as you might have seen, is that enemies can be staggered by attacks, and they also spend time aiming at you. Very often that allows you to one-on-one an enemy by just standing right in front of them and shooting. Even if you need to reload, the delay from the stagger and aiming can be long enough for you to still get the next shot in and continue a stun lock on them. This breaks down when there's more than one enemy, and indeed you see me here having some trouble because I aggroed a load of enemies and had to fight them all at once. This was back at the start of the level, and the reason I had to restart was because I shot the NPC in a protect the NPC segment, so whoops. The level itself is moderately simple, in that you're just moving from one end of a street to the other with various sideshows along the way, like getting an NPC to walk part of the way with you. You fight a car, there's a part where you climb a building to get a membership pass to open the final door, there's a snipe out up there. Just little 2-minute gameplay segments one after the other, and there's something almost cute about this. It's extremely unpretentious. All the variety is here, and it makes a lot of use of small space without doing anything particularly special. It's just trying all the ideas the game engine allows all the time to keep things slightly fresh. It reeks of care and interest in making the game fun, which is something that applies to the whole game experience, I would say. Chicago in Timesplitters 2, despite being only a few minutes long, and really is just a nothing burger compared to quote-unquote grown-up FPS games, it's among my favourite levels in gaming. I just like how it plays out. I really like the music for some reason. I regularly remember the music to this very day. Lots of nice music in this game, I think. Well, anyway, we get to the end where you have to shoot your way through the mob boss's club and kill the man himself, and then you pick up a time crystal he drops to open a portal to the future because of the plot. It's pretty simple. The ending only lasts a minute, and it's a refreshing take on a level climax because of how utterly unpretentious it is. There's no attempt to build any more hype for itself than the raw gameplay will bring to the table. Somehow the uninterrupted and sensible seeming approach to what happens, with no cutscenes, no bombast, it makes the achievement seem more real and in character. It reminds me of that Half-Life feel as well, if anyone knows what I mean by that. So that's story mode basically, but now we're going to look at the rest of the game, and indeed most of the game in Timesplitters is outside of the story mode. The majority of the game's content is in the arcade and challenge modes. So first, arcade. This is a long series of matches in all sorts of modes, and it's perhaps most easily comparable to the aforementioned Unreal Tournament. It's just gameplay for gameplay's sake, or competition's sake. Just team deathmatch on a map, something that somehow I feel doesn't exist anymore. I don't know why I'm saying this. Am I wrong there? I guess we do have modern PvP hero shooters that took over this niche, but I'm looking for something more like a PvE tournament shooter, whatever that is, or something. Well, there is Timesplitters. These matches tend to be grouped together into themes, and maybe the theme here is that rocket launchers are involved, because the first one was rocket launchers being used to kill robots, the second one is rocket launchers being used to kill sci-fi themed enemies, in a mode where you have to collect coins instead of explicitly getting kills here, so a bit different to your normal deathmatch setup, since you can theoretically get points from other people's kills, and in that previous one there was something like your health gets restored when you get killed. There are all kinds of slight variants on deathmatch in this, as well as loads of other kinds of mode, like capture the area, capture the stuff, do the thing. I don't know, if you've played this sort of game you probably know what I'm talking about. If you don't, well, you missed it. You missed the chance in history to know what I'm talking about. You missed this kind of game existing. The only point I wanted to make is that it's plain old-fashioned, pure and simple entertainment of a fashion that, I want to be as old manly as possible about. Where is the modern equivalent of this game? They don't make them like they used to, and so on. Another thing to mention, by the way, is that at the end of each of these matches, you get ranked, like bronze, silver, or gold, based on how well you did. And the ranking system can be a bit frustrating, because there is an RNG factor, obviously, to how things are going to go in these matches. However, this only really matters if you want to go for the best ranking, the secret best ranking as well. There is a hidden rank available in every match called Platinum, which is awarded if you do significantly better than the criteria for gold. The game never tells you the Platinum conditions. And I don't think it ever tells you Platinum Awards are even available until the first time you get one just somehow by accident. After then, like, something appears in your stats screen somewhere that tells you how many of them you have, and you have to get all of them, like in every match and every story mode and everything, to 100% the game and get that on your save file. I remember getting to somewhere in the 90s back when I was in school, but I could never manage to get through like the last bits I couldn't do despite constant attempts. I was probably experiencing a minor obsession, yes. Well, anyway, we'll see an example of this platinum thing shortly, but what we're seeing here is probably only gold tier gameplay, not platinum gameplay. To get platinum, usually you have to do things perfectly, so you need like perfect gameplay and you need perfect luck as well. For example, enemies like spawn next to you all the time or something, so you get kills fast, that sort of thing. Unfortunately, all of the 3 matches I filmed to show you for arcade mode were really similar for some reason, so just take my word for it that there are loads of game modes, weapon sets, enemy sets, maps and stuff, including like an assault mode that's straight out of Unreal Tournament where you complete objectives across a linear map. It's got it all, not pictured here. You're watching OVD's Game Grounds. Oh, and as a random interlude before the next part, here's some footage of me wandering around in the Neo Tokyo level of the story mode. This was another one where I couldn't work out what to do at some point. I couldn't remember what to do. And one thing I wanted to add from my earlier ranting is that you can look up what to do in a pause menu. There's a list of mission objectives that might point you in the right direction. I wonder if having the current objective be on the screen all the time, would that be considered like what the modern complainer would call hand-holding? Personally, I think it should at least tell you what the next objective is when it starts. Yes, these objectives only appear on the screen after you do them, so you don't know what the new objective is unless you go and look it up in this list. And even then, it might not be the most helpful thing. So like back in that Soviet base when I had that objective requiring the disk and the computer, in the pause menu it just says restore power. Nothing like find the disk or reboot the computer in the control room or something that might be a bit more generous and point you towards what's going on, perhaps avoiding those complaints from me earlier. I don't know. It's strange because when I played this while young, I never thought this was a problem. I never thought it was bad to not know what to do, because I guess as a kid in the past, all games were like this. This was just the experience of exploring a game, was like just coming up against things you had no idea what to do with. And working it out, even when it's trivial stuff, felt like gameplay, I guess. So now I've just got this different attitude. Now I'm like, oh, you just had to press X on a door. As a kid, okay, like I would feel clever for working out you could press X on a door to open it. Now I'm like, that was it? Like, then why wasn't it clearly established in the game that doors with so-and-so design were interactable? Wow, you wasted my time. I feel no sense of achievement for overcoming the barrier. Because of you ruined everything, and so on. I'm mad. Let's move on to challenge mode. Challenge mode consists of a bunch of solo activities that aren't really arcade game modes unto themselves, and usually involve gamifying some activity that's possible in the game but isn't important. The one I remember most is something about shooting a load of monkeys on top of the dam from the first level, but for this footage, we'll focus on the very first challenge, actually taking place at the foot of said dam. It's time to break all the glass in an area as quickly as possible, using only a grenade launcher. What a gamey gameplay element that is. You know, it's a lost art, I claim. It reminds me slightly of Rampages in GTA 3 or something like that, where it just randomly tasks you to do stuff for gameplay's sake, with no story or context. I feel like the best no-context gameplay stuff you'll get these days is like finding collectibles. I don't know, like if you're playing The Last of Us, the game probably isn't going to be like, hey, can you throw 10 bricks through 10 windows and just make that part of the game suddenly? Even though it's possible in the game engine to have that play out, and it might even be fun, I guess it would break the immersion or something, but I assure you that more games would benefit from a mode where you just have to break all the windows. So here, I need to scout out where all the windows are and start putting together a fast route to get to them all, keeping in mind the grenades have an area of effect and can bounce around corners, potentially opening up some cheeky options here. It only takes a couple of runs to get things down below 18 seconds, getting me the gold. But here I wanted to dig down and get a time that will reveal the secret platinum system. So I kept trying to improve things. I put together a route that could get things down to the 14 to 15 seconds mark if I pulled it off quite well. I was really betting on this idea of shooting a few grenades blindly towards some of the windows in the 1 second you spend moving into the play area. I was also determined to include running up the stairs at the back of the 2-story building, because the hardest bit of glass to get to, IMO, is the door that's back there. When you shoot the windows from the outside, usually that door is too far away to also get blown out. So by tackling the upstairs windows all at once by shooting right through that door, that ensures you get them all, but it does require going around the whole building, and also requires very precisely timing your grenade shots right as the small door window whizzes past, which I often failed. After 15 minutes of attempts, I got something going where I had more and more trick shots, shooting 2 of the building's worth of windows without going over there using bouncing grenades. And with this I was able to get the time below 13 seconds. And after that I was basically out of ideas. I was devastated to see I still didn't have the platinum. It's like, what do you want from me, game? You really want me to go below 12 seconds? It's actually worse than that, little did I know. I started doing some experiments looking for new possible trick shots that might save big time somewhere. Essentially I was testing where to shoot grenades from to kill certain windows early. But after another 10 minutes of not finding anything good, I decided to go to the good old-fashioned GameFAQs list of platinum times. Looks like I still need this thing, even all these years later. And it turns out you have to get it under 11 seconds for platinum, which I thought was just outright impossible. I ended up looking at a video of someone getting this platinum, and I found, to my dismay, that the route wasn't anything particularly special at all. I was investigating all the wrong things. In fact, it was the same route I'd been trying on my initial attempts back before I even had gold, with the difference being the execution was good, and that the grenades shot into the upper window of the 2-story building did successfully take out the door pane at the far end, the thing I hinged my whole plan around being too hard or just never happening. So I gave this approach a go, and things went okay, but strangely, while I did get that door pane without going up there, proving it is pretty doable, the regular panes weren't hit this time for some reason. So I restarted again and put more emphasis on bombarding those upper floors right away, and did everything else the same, and sure enough, I did get the platinum, with the same time as the online video in fact. It was possible after all. Not really a success story for me here, since I just used a walkthrough, not a crowning triumph, but, well, that will have to do basically. It took like 2 minutes to get the gold, but then 30 minutes to get platinum with cheating. So that's indicative of how much harder the platinum challenges are. Combined with not knowing what the times actually are, they're really frustrating, although luckily most of the times have been reverse engineered by people online. So you can always cheat. Another gameplay challenge overcome by the power of cheating. There you have it, we've done it. To complete the Timesplitters 2 adventure, I decided to add in some map maker footage. This is another of these features that's generally been lost to time, but I personally quite like. You can make your own stages to play on, and I remember doing this a lot back in the day. But the limitations are very clear. You saw me picking beginner mode just now, which limits what you're allowed to put down, and limits the map to a single floor, so that was a wrong choice to start off with. We'll see advanced mode in a sec. But the real limitation is that the map you'll make will essentially have to just be a load of corridors, like that's how it's designed to be. It's very easy to use with snap-together pieces that will mark the possible wall or door connections. A massive limitation also is the file size. The bar at the top left depletes when you build, and you'll find that you can add nothing even close to the size of the map area given to you, especially in advanced mode. I think we're suffering from some console peasant hardware limitations, as if I was playing a classic map maker like Age of Empires, that would be no problem today, but we're stuck on PS2 here, so all I could really make was a map that was vaguely inspired by Two Fort in that it was going to have 3 paths. However, because I messed it up, the middle path wasn't accessible, and basically I just made a big rectangular corridor. Well, it worked out. Then I returned to try again in advanced mode, and here you can use pieces to change height, pieces covering multiple floors, and the large room piece, which adds a cool base or central feature. The ultimate result was that I was able to make a map that was a lot more like Two Fort, with a sewer route, a central route, and an on top of the central route. 2 Fort is a Team Fortress 2 map, by the way. If you have no idea what this design motif even is, doesn't actually matter. You can see the AI wasn't happy with my placement of their spawn point and they got stuck, which is a shame, but I did want to make a general point about bugs and such in games like this, so let's rant while you see me playing on this map I made. Bugs and problems are outrageously rare. It's another old man point really, like, back in the day, a game needed to be totally polished before release day, because whatever you put out was like what the reviewers would talk about forever. It needed to be finished. These days, I think it would be like astounding to find a game that's completely done on release. Well, actually, Breath of the Wild, mentioned before, is an example of one of those. But generally, if you're a PC gaming loser like me, the majority of games will be broken in some way because of how easy it is to theoretically fix them later. And sometimes they actually do get fixed later. In fact, it's kind of turned around, I feel, because we've come so far that the idea that a game is finished on release can even be undesirable to some players. Like, some players will expect new content to be added after the game is released as part of the patching process, even if the game isn't advertising itself as early access or anything like that. And some players will get mad if this doesn't happen. They'll say it's a dead game. They'll declare this because the game was finished, basically. That's what they mean by that. And I don't know, I perhaps think there's a forgotten legend of the old times when plopping out a finished game was like the pinnacle of game development. It's hard to not need to patch your game, but in the past you had to do that because patching was virtually impossible. So I don't know. I think Timesplitters is a very finished and content-rich product, and it's surprising that it works really well given how much stuff there must have been to test in its development. So there you have it. It's got the old man seal of approval. And I guess that's all for now. Timesplitters 2, I've been playing it again. It's still good. It's old and gold. Lots of fun stuff. Probably a nightmare to test with so much stuff the player can customize in matches. But they did it. And maybe I'll come back and praise Timesplitters 3 at some point as well, which is very much in the same vein. But 2 was the one I played the most back in this hypothetical day I keep referencing. And now you know more about it if you didn't already. I guess that's been my assorted thoughts. More thoughts of varying levels of assortment coming soon. Thanks for watching.